Today we're going to answer the question, what is critical power? Critical power represents the boundary between stable and unstable physiology, or the threshold between sustainable and unsustainable intensity. When people talk about FTP, functional threshold power, the peak maximal wattage for 60 minutes, they are typically talking about what critical power measures. Okay, and typically speaking, critical power is an intensity that can be maintained for anywhere between 30 and 70 minutes, depending upon the athlete. So what we really want to know is where is the threshold between stable physiology and unstable physiology? Okay, and below this threshold, we are primarily aerobic in nature, and above that threshold, we go into significantly more anaerobic energy systems. Now, we all have a power duration curve. Okay, so all of us, every single one of us who rides a bike, has a curve that is in this family of curves. As for short durations, we can maintain very high intensity, and as those durations get longer, then the maximal intensity that we can sustain for that duration decreases. And this curve for each one of us represents approaches a certain point, and the place where the curve approaches is known as our critical power. This critical power is the asymptote of the curve. Theoretically speaking, it is the limit of the curve where the curve will approach but never quite get to, theoretically speaking. Okay, and then this box over here. This is our anaerobic capacity, known as W prime. It's the amount of total work that we can do, max amount of work on the curve for any given duration. The thing with this power duration curve is it is a decay curve, and it is very challenging to model this curve with the tools that we have nowadays. So, because it is very challenging to model this particular curve, it is also therefore very challenging to understand where the asymptote of that curve is. Where is the line that this curve will approach but never quite get to? What is the limit of the curve? So we were lucky enough to have an understanding that Dr. Phil Skiba found that if you can locate three maximal efforts on the curve, a shorter duration effort, say about 3 minutes, a moderately length duration effort, say around 6 minutes, and a longer duration maximal effort, say around 12 minutes, and you change the perspective from thinking about the measuring in terms of wattage to work being simply the product of average wattage and duration in seconds, okay, then the relationship becomes linear. And if we plot duration to total work, so test duration and total work in kilojoules, okay, then we have 3 points through which there is a line of best fit, a linear relationship. And through linear regression, we are able to determine what the equation of that line of best fit is. So this line of best fit, brings us back to our Algebra 1 high school days, y equals mx plus b. And Dr. Phil Skiba was able to determine that the slope of this line, okay, the rise over the run, represents the critical power. And the y-intercept of this line represents the anaerobic capacity, the W prime. If we go back to our former power duration curve, then in the linear example, right, the slope of that line is our critical power, represents this. The y-intercept of that line of best fit represents our anaerobic capacity, or W prime. And this is very easy to measure. So we are lucky enough to have a calculator that utilizes linear regression, where if we input a short test duration, the result of a short test duration, say it's for 3 minutes, 351 watts, a moderate test duration, say for 6 minutes, 305 watts, and a longer test duration, say 12 minutes, 287 watts, then this calculator will perform the linear regression and output the slope of the line, or the critical power, and the y-intercept of the line, the anaerobic capacity. and then it also outputs training zones. So if we go back to our muscle fiber utilization chart, okay, we are able to build training zones that once we know a critical power, we are able to build training zones that are built across these energy systems. Okay, we have a very good understanding of where our LT1 typically occurs relative to critical power, where our crossover between type 2A oxidative and type 2A glycolytic fibers occurs relative to critical power. And we can therefore determine training zones that are built around these particular energy systems. And that allows us to become very precise with an athlete's training as a result of understanding critical power in the first place.